Hey guys, so the thing I'm in right here, this thing is the Toshiba Satellite 200 CDS. It's an old laptop from around 95. It had the option to come with Windows or Windows 3.1. And boy is it a beast of a machine. It has this awful display. I mean, my complexion's never looked so bad. And it has a keyboard like that is like a clicky keyboard. It's amazing. It's got a built-in floppy that you can swap out for a CD-ROM. It's a 100 megahertz machine. It's got 800 megabyte hard drive, which I've lost. And we're just going to be having a little play with it today, and so you can see what I'm doing to try and revive the thing. Anyway, let's get started. So this is the Toshiba 200 CDS. Hopefully you'll have got that from the intro that I'm planning to do, but who knows if that's going to work out. It is a laptop from the mid-90s, probably around 94, 95, maybe a little bit later. It had the option of coming with Windows 3.1 or Windows 95. Now when I got this machine about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I'm not sure with dates, just let's leave it at that. It had Windows 95 on it and it ran slow. It's a 100 megahertz machine and it only has 8 megabytes of RAM in it, which isn't a lot. I mean, it's more than enough for something like Windows 3.1 and Windows 95 if you don't plan on running any other programs on it, other than perhaps a word processor. But it's not useful for browsing the internet. It just can't hold enough of the web page in memory. So what I plan to do with this is hopefully, maybe some DOS games, but also perhaps doing some parallel port programming. In fact, before we open it up and have a look, let's have a look at the sides of the thing. So over this side, we have a built-in floppy disk drive, and there's the lock over there for the hard drive. And we've got a contrast control on the screen here. Now, this is an STN screen, which means it's a bit crap and doesn't really have very fast response times. So anything you see on here will look like it has motion blur applied. The better versions are the CDT ones. This is the 200 CDS. On the back, we have our parallel port. This is a printer parallel port. We've got is that the monitor out? That's the monitor out. We've got an infrared receiver / transmitter. This thing, if I can get inside, is for the dock, I believe. I've got power in, so it's got its own built-in PSU. I've got a little fan here and a PS2 port for the keyboard and mouse. Over here we've got a serial port and we've got a proprietary connector. This one is actually, it's an IDE connector for connecting external peripherals. Now, I've got one here. This is a CD-ROM drive that slips into this little case, and then we have the connector which goes in here. Now, the interesting thing about this CD-ROM drive, if I can, oops, there we are, it slides out of the case, and so I can slide out the floppy drive on the other side and put the CD-ROM as built in, and the floppy drive can go in here instead. However, this CD-ROM drive only reads sort of non-copied CD-ROMs, so I can play music on it, but I don't have any software from the time to use it with, so it's pretty much useless. Next to that, we've got a PCMCIA slot. I think that's right. I've got a card for that here. This is a little Netgear FA410. That's the code on it, and it slots in, and it is a network adapter, so it can go through to Ethernet, which is fantastic. So I remember when I first bought this, I managed to share a network share from this machine to my Windows 10 machine, which was a little bit exciting, I have to say. On the front, we've got a volume control, we've got a headphone jack and a speaker. And then let's have a look at the under the lid, shall we? So under the lid, you'll see we've got some Nice sort of clicky keys. I think they're going to be rubber dome keys and not mechanical, but they feel nice. There's a lot of travel in them. We've got one of these little nipple mouses, and I kind of like these, but they're not the best. It's a lot easier to use an external mouse. However, we'll be using that. And there's your left click and right click keys. The nipple on the mouse is getting a little bit sticky with age, unfortunately. Not for that reason, but because the rubber's aging. And we've got sort of function keys that you normally expect on a laptop, and a small little LED display. Well, LED, they're back illuminated, so it shows power and what the hard drive's doing. And this is our screen. So it's a lovely grey looking laptop. I kind of like the grey look. It would be nice if laptops came in this kind of grey still. And it's aged pretty well. It doesn't look too bad. What we're going to do with this laptop, because I forgot to mention, although I probably do in the intro, on the bottom of the laptop we can get into the hard drive compartment, which is also the battery compartment. So the battery would have sat just here on these contacts, and then the hard drive sits here on this IDE connector just underneath. Now I've lost the hard drive for this because I took it out some time ago. It wasn't working properly. It was had lots and lots of bad sectors. I did when I first got it, I did sort of a scan disk type deal on it. Can't remember what the program's called. It probably is check disk on DOS. And it took over 24 hours and I just cancelled it in the end because it kept finding so many bad sectors and then trying to read more. So I have gotten rid of that. I don't know where I've put it. I think I kept it. And we're going to be using one of these. I'll give you a close-up view. This is a CF to IDE adapter. Now, that means you can use a CF card. I've got one here. This is a 128 megabyte CF card. I used to have this for my very old Canon 400D or 450D. No, it was a 350D camera. Pretty old thing. And I used to use these and I could put loads of photos on them. But these days, my big camera, my work camera, each photo is like 22 megabytes. So I can't fit a lot on here. So we'll be using one of these. It just slots in and then you plug this one in underneath just here. So let's do that and we'll install DOS onto this machine to start with, and then we'll look at installing Windows 3.1. Now it's difficult to see here, but there is a keying point on this IDE connector. Not all IDE connectors have this keying point. So this is a hole that's filled, I guess. And I had to cut a pin off this little CF card adapter. I don't know if you can see where I've cut it off. It's just there, really badly done. But it lines up to here. So when I did this to start with, I was really worried that I would get it wrong. So let's slot that in. Now this is an unformatted CF card, so we're going to have to format it in DOS. And luckily, I have some disks for DOS somewhere around here, so we'll be able to do that. Here we are. So I have disk 1, disk 2, and disk 3 for DOS 6 with enhanced tools. So we'll be using these. Now, I remember they didn't work very well last time, so we might have to persevere. I have a spare disk 3 somewhere, one of these, so if this one doesn't work, then we've got a spare, but not for the other two, unfortunately. So let's get started. Right, so we're about ready to go. I'm going to pop the first MS-DOS disk in. Where is it? Here it is. Into the drive. So this is essentially our install disk, and I'll power it on. Now, the real-time clock battery in here has long gone. So really what I need to do is get inside the case and take it out because it could leak. But it will complain to me about the battery not being there. Yeah, there we go. As you can see on the screen, it says bad RTC battery, check some CMOS, whatever. We're just going to press the F1 key. We'll jump into the BIOS. Here you can actually see we've got our memory, 8.192 meg. So this, our BIOS ROM is included in that. And various other things, VGA compatible, battery save mode for whatever. It's all really old computer stuff that I don't really remember anymore. It's been a very long time since I've used a machine like this. So what it's going to do is ignore the fact that there's no time and date saved. We're going to do a little memory test, something you might remember from a long, long time ago. And then we're going to start reading from the drive. In fact, I can let you hear that. It's a very familiar sound to most of you, I'm sure, and to me too. I remember playing, was it Commander Keen and Duke Nukem 1 and 2? Not the 3D versions. They were on, I'm sure that was on a CD. So, MS-DOS setup 6, press enter. The settings might as well be correct. So we've got the dates come up as the 1st of the 1st, 1990. It doesn't really matter. We want to install it to C-DOS. And okay, well, it's happy that it's formatted that card. I formatted it on my Windows 10 machine, so obviously it's happy with that. I'm surprised it didn't complain about the formatting, but it seems to be working. All right, I'm gonna let this run. I'll leave the camera going and we'll speed through it. So while that's happening, let's talk about some of the specs of this machine, shall we? It had originally an 800 megabyte hard drive, which, you know, isn't a lot. And I'm glad I got rid of it. And the maximum amount of RAM it could have was 40 meg. So that's not an awful lot. And it was like 600 nanosecond RAM as well. So not very quick. So it was a 66 megahertz RAM. So these days you get RAM up to, you know, 2400 megahertz. It's insane in comparison. The video memory on this one was 2 meg, I think, or is it 4 meg? It might be 4 meg. And so that was to buffer the screen. The screen is native 800 by 600, and it can also do virtual displays as well. So you can have up to 1280 by 1024 in a virtual display in Windows. Windows 3.1 will do a virtual display, which is incredible. So it means that you can scroll around the screen. So it's got quite a lot of expansion ports. So it's got its 9-pin serial, which was it's UART compliant, and then you've got the 25-pin parallel port, and it also has that infrared serial port, which is really interesting. And I think it was compatible up to 115 kilobits per second or something. And then it's got like a headphone and a was that a headphone jack? I can't remember if it's a headphone or if it's a microphone jack. But it won't be software defined, I wouldn't imagine, unless it's a dual one. I don't know really. And sort of it had an internal battery of 2,800 milliamp hours, according to the outside of the battery, which doesn't seem like an awful lot, especially since it uses sort of 30 watts. So it's not going to last a very long time. So I imagine the battery life on full power would be about 2 hours. So these came bundled with software, and I think you could choose whether you wanted Windows 95 or Windows 3.11. Oh, we've got ourselves an error on the disk too. So we're just going to try the operation again. This is a very familiar sight to any of you that work with old floppies that haven't been stored very well. And mine haven't, because I just left them in a box. So you could choose which operating system you wanted to use, whether it was Windows 95 or 3.11. Now, at this time, lots of people still had lots and lots of software from Windows 3.1. So they would have kept using it. And some of that software might not have been compatible with Windows 95. Windows 95 was a 32-bit operating system, whereas Windows 3.11 or 3.1 was a 16-bit operating system. So there were some things that didn't work, and eventually I think they came out with, is it WinSox, something like that, to make it work. I might have to go and find another disk or burn another disk. Oh no, it's still working. That's good. Now it looks like we're having some luck with this. Looks like it's going through relatively smoothly. I've only had to retry the reading of that disk a few times now. I say a few, probably more like 10. But yeah, it's going quite well. Next, we've got Windows 3.11 to install. That's the work. What is it? Work for Windows or something like that? It's like WFW. work groups for Windows, that's what it's called. And I have those on disk, so we'll be able to install it. It's on like 9 disks, I think. No, it was Windows for Workgroups. Right, we're just about to be finished, so we're on 100%, we're done. So we can take out our disk now and then press enter. And it's going to restart our machine into a DOS shell, is it called? A DOS prompt. So this is our, at the moment, DOS is our entire operating system. I think DOS actually stands for Disk Operating System. So there we go, this is it. So if I do dir, there we go, we've got what we've used, I don't know, maybe like 5 megabytes there. So we've got 121 megabytes in there. Oh God, it's still got DCIM in here, which is from my camera when I first used it. So yeah, maybe I didn't format it. Maybe I just took it straight out of the camera. So it must have been formatted to FAT12 or FAT. So yeah, there we go. FAT stands for File Allocation Table. So now we want to go install Windows. And I have my Windows disks here. Disk 1, Disk 2, Disk 3. You can hopefully read that. I can't really tell. But I burnt these a very long time ago when I had this machine for the first time. I created these disks. And I created them because I used to have, well, I say I used to, I still do. I had these Librex versions. These are like official versions. But it probably came from a libretto, Toshiba libretto maybe. Anyway, these discs are wrecked. They do not work. So I had to create some new ones. And I think that's fine, isn't it? It's pretty much dead software. So we'll go to the A drive. I've just popped in the first disk. And let's type setup. I think I recall that that's what is required. Hopefully. It's ticking away down there. There we go, Windows 3.11 setup. So it was Windows for Workgroups. So to set up Windows for Workgroups, press enter. We want Express setup because I don't want to have to mess around with all the settings. I'd like this to be as quick as possible. Now this may take some time. So while it's doing this, I'm going to talk to you about some other stuff that's going on. So I'm working on several projects at the moment, but I'm sort of messing around and not doing them. Not on purpose exactly, it's just, you know, life just gets in the way a lot of the time, and I haven't had a lot of time to do it. Plus I'm a little bit skint, so I'm gonna have to wait till payday to buy some extra bits that I need for these projects. So one of them is a power supply. I'm gonna pick up a switch mode power supply, something to replace that awful one in that radio I took apart the other day. And I'll also use that same power supply for other projects, I think. I might pick up 2. There's the big sort of LED matrix that I wanted to build. Oh, we need disk 2. And that LED matrix requires something like 5 or 6 amps of power to keep going. And that's going to be a bit of a challenge because 5 or 6 amps from most of the power supplies I have is impossible. They only supply about 2.4 maximum. And that's because, we're restarting, which means, we're going into the graphical setup area. So it's going to try and detect a network card. Did I leave that one plugged in? I did. Hopefully it doesn't detect it because I don't want to have to go through all the drivers for that. No, it hasn't. It's going to ask me to put my name in. And as I recall, this was mandatory that you had to put your name in. And we don't need to do anything else. So there we go. And then it's going to go through and install. It'll probably take a few of these disks. As I remember, you don't need to use all of these, up to 9 disks, because there's some sort of extra stuff on the other ones for networking and for for the work groups bit. So I don't need to put it all on. There'll be some printer drivers and stuff like that on there too. So yeah, power supplies. Most of mine only kick out about 2 amps, unless I'm using my benchtop power supply, which can supply a lot more. However, that's not appropriate for something that I want to look nice. So I need to pick up something else. And so we'll be doing that soon. The radio cube is coming along. It's by no means finished, but what I really need is like a day off to just sit down and do the software. Because when I get home in the evening, almost the last thing I want to do is sit down at a computer for hours again after doing it at work for hours. So most of the time I don't do any more programming. So I just need to get a day off so that I'm happy enough to do it. And this doesn't really count as sitting in front of a computer all day. This doesn't feel like that. This feels like an ancient toy. I love it. Other than that, we've got the binary clock, which I'm really excited about because it involves zero programming whatsoever. It's just going to be, it's all pure CMOS, hopefully. And once that's built on a breadboard, someone mentioned doing a live stream on that. So I might do it. I'm going to test out one series of digits first, test out the idea first. And then I'm just waiting on the chips coming in. And then once that's done, I will try and schedule a live stream. We'll try and build the whole thing up together and see where it fails. So that'll be fun. And then eventually I'll design a PCB for it and we'll make it into a kit. If anyone's still interested in that. I'm not really sure I mind if anyone's not interested in it. I'm still going to get some printed for myself. And I can give a couple away, I'm sure. Although I don't know that many nerds, honestly, so not sure who would really want it. Do you remember a while ago I told you about a high altitude balloon that I was planning to launch with the electronics club at the university I work for? Well, that is going ahead. We're doing our final checks and setting up our power system, which we should have set up before really, but we've only just sort of got round to it. We've applied for approval to launch and it will be happening at the end of June, I believe. So I'm very excited for that. Absolutely zero experience on any of our team's part in doing it. So it's there's probably a high chance of failure. We've never filled a helium balloon before. We've bought 2 balloons just in case we burst one while we're there. So it will be fun. We've obviously read a lot online and watched people's videos, but I don't think that really prepares you for actually doing it yourself because it's so easy to make mistakes. We've got checklists ready. I think we're very well prepared, apart from our power delivery system, which we're still not sorted out. We're getting there. We're definitely getting there. But it's for the students to figure out themselves mostly and for me to guide them. So I'll do my best, but since none of us have done it before, it's a bit of a challenge and it's a bit of an unknown. But they and I are ridiculously excited about it. So it's going to go up with a camera and it's also going to go up with a couple of GPS modules. One is to record to the SD card and the other one is called Spot GPS, and it's probably more reliable than our solution because we want to find the thing. So that's going to go up. It's one of those subscription-based text in it, sends you a message thing. And it'll also go up with some temperature sensors, there's an altitude sensor, barometric pressure sensor possibly. I'm not sure what the kids put in there actually, but I know the basics. I'm also sending it up with a 1 kilometer max distance transmitter, which is like the SI 8 something. And that's so that when we get close to the ground, if we're not receiving GPS, I can at least see whether the other GPS is working on the board, and that might give us something. Right, we're at printer installation. So we're not going to install any printers. I don't have a printer in the house, and we don't want to do network setup, not just now anyway. And I think we might be done. Oh no, Right, so I've jumped back into the Windows setup program. I've started reinstalling it again. It's sort of intelligently carrying on from where I left off. It is throwing up some file copy errors, which I'm going to skip. I'm assuming that they're already present on the disk and either loaded in memory or something like that, but they're unable to be edited. So they might be read-only, I'm not sure, but I'm just going to skip those and hopefully we'll get back to the same position we were in before when I prematurely exited the setup. Right, we're back at the same point where I did something stupid. So we're just going to go with continue. And it's asking me to set up applications. So we can now restart the computer. And it says after restarting, type win at the MS-DOS prompt. So I shouldn't have exited at the point that I did. So let's just select that, restart the computer, and then we'll type win, and hopefully we'll be into Windows 3.11. And then at that point, all I need to do is find a way to use a Windows 3.11 program or a Windows program to control the parallel port as I/O. So we've got high mem, testing extended memory, and now we just type win. Ah, look, there it is. That is some retro goodness. I think I'm probably going to have to install the drivers for the display. Yeah, I am, look. So it's selected it as not the one I want. So let's quickly do that. I have them somewhere. There we are. So you'll be very familiar with Windows 95 or systems like this, but this one is very, very different. So it does not look the same. It was one of my favorite versions of Windows just because it looks so cool. So let's go to, what's in Windows? Is there something in that? Maybe there's a Windows only setup. No, there's not. Okay. I believe this is a DOS program. So let's go to setup and we'll load this in. So this will give us our graphics drivers for this panel. Any key to continue, all resolutions selected, and end to install, and install there. Okay, so I know that this is an 800 by 600 display. That's its native resolution, so that's one we'll be looking for. I won't look at the virtual resolutions, which you can use. We'll just go with the native ones. I kind of love the look of this old DOS sort of setup. So you'll notice in DOS actually it runs the screen just fine in its native resolution, but it's just in Windows it doesn't have the correct driver. Okay, change your Windows directory, type setup. Okay, press any key to exit. So now we need to exit to DOS. I do. And then we're going to have to shut down. So how do we do that? Is it just file? Oh no, that's exiting that. Ah, it's from this menu, isn't it? So you know, if you can see the mouse pointer there, you'll see that it sort of disappears when you move it, and that's this STN display. So we want to go to exit Windows. Now, a lot of people back in the day would have used keyboard shortcuts. I don't remember any of them. CD Windows setup. And so this is going to allow us to change our graphics options. So display, VGA, and these are the ones we just installed, the chips drivers. And we want to select 800 by 600 at 64K colors. Okay. Enter to keep. And then if we go to Win Now, we should get a full screen display in full 64,000 colors. There we go, look at that. And you can see that mouse pointer wiggling around. Now, one of the best things about Windows 3.1 was obviously Minesweeper, but also everyone loves a bit of solitaire. Look at that, isn't that brilliant? Have I got anything I can put down? I have. So we can put our ace down and bring that back over. And our jack can go over here. Woo, almost losing it there. And then we can put our 10 on if we want to. So yeah, I'll be looking for some software to run the parallel port on this. But for now, that is it. And I'm going to try and install Windows 10, but I'm going to have to find a version of Windows 10. But it's a fun little machine, isn't it? I love it. There's a little icon down there for Solitaire. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. It's just been a little interesting video. Nothing really important happening here today. But I hope you enjoyed this little trip down memory lane with the Toshiba 200 CDS.